What to the slave is the 4th of July? This is Frederick Douglass's title for his address. Now, he could have titled it in more common word order, what is the 4th of July to the slave? Which is better and why? This is just a matter of judgment and opinion. There's no ultimately right answer.
Slave is the word that has like a much stronger connotation in this perspective, and it like kind of tells the different story. So immediately introducing it kind of sets the tone for the paper.
Not kind of, not
Oh,
kind.
definitely.
Definitely, yes.
Sets the tone
You
for the
said
paper.
kind of twice already. Remember, I
Yes.
said I had a crutch in writing, kind of, sort of. And I think I saw you nodding back there. Yep, get rid of that crutch. But your answer is very good. Yes, it emphasizes that word slave. What to the slave? And matter of fact, the emphasis in pronouncing it falls on the word slave. What to the slave is the 4th of July? Question mark. Not what is the 4th of July to the slave. Katie.
I also feel, just in the sound, that what to sounds better than what is the, I mean, it has a more melodic sound to it.
Yes. What to the slave? There's a rhythm. All prose has a rhythm. It's not like metrics in poetry, which is very often regular, but all prose has a rhythm. And the rhythm is conducive to the ear, taking it in more readily or not. The patriotism of common descent is the mere patriotism of the group or clan. Which would you pick, group or clan? Katie, why clan? You say clan. Why clan? Clan's a perfectly good word. It belonged to the Clan MacDonald. What's wrong with that?
It has a harsher or a different connotation.
What's the connotation of clan here?
It's just suggesting that a clan, I don't know, it just invokes a
Philip, you want to help Katie out here? I think it's the better choice, but
I feel like clan feels more tribalistic.
yes.
Just...
Yeah, we talk about tribes and clans. They're more self-enclosed. You enter a clan generally by what? Birth. Yes, by birth. It's a more restrictive identity in which, and most of the people in a clan are in some way related to one another already. In short, what we might say today is a clan is often not a very diverse group of people. So here, the patriotism of common descent is the mere patriotism of the clan. There's a negative connotation to this with mere patriotism. If the meanest/lowest man in the Republic is deprived of his rights, then what do you think is the best choice here?
I think what would be better here is the lowest man in the Republic, whereas mean probably has some connotation of the person is at fault there. I think what the statement's trying to say is talk about having some pity for the person who's deprived of its rights. Perhaps if they were mean, they almost deserved it more. I think this is saying that it's bad if the lowest or the most pitiful person loses their rights.
Yes, and there's a further reason why lowest might now be a better choice. Yeah, Noor?
Does it imply differences in social class, especially if you're talking in the political respect?
It can. Meanest, to be mean used to mean simply to be poor or low in social order. It didn't mean to be nasty at all in any kind of way. That wasn't the original and common use of the word mean as applied to people. It just meant someone who didn't really have a lot in life and generally was a laborer of some kind. So this, I think, is a somewhat tough choice, but I think probably today we might say lowest, although I think it's a hard one because lowest has a connotation of, you know, not measuring up. This is a difficult one. But what the sentence says is clear, that if anyone in the Republic who has perhaps, shall we say, less money, less socioeconomic status, less power, less influence is deprived of rights, then there is a problem with that. Bells mourned or bells sobbed. Cities wore crepe or black. People stood in tears or people stood crying. We've got three choices here. This is from our reading. You'll know. And again, I'm not saying that there are always the best choices made, but...
So wait, do you want me to do like all three?
Oh,
of them?
no, do
Or just-
one.
Okay,
Do one.
so
Leave
I
something
think,
for someone
Yeah,
else.
I was about to say. So I think on this one, sobbed is better than mourned because it kind of gives a onomatopoeia to it a little bit. It personifies like the bells' noises as like cries.
Sobbed?
Yeah. So with mourned, I think of mourning more like a process, but sobbed, you can kind of envision the sound that the bells would make, like from actually clanging.
Okay.
So.
Yes? Jake?
Like, wouldn't it be kind of weird to have like the bells sobbing and the people crying?
Might be. That's possible. But sobbing and crying go together. What did Sandberg actually write? Does anyone remember? He wrote sobbed. I myself don't like the choice, but that's what he wrote, and I think it's defensible. I never heard the Lowell House bells sob, but I never heard them being played for a funeral either. So, bells sound different at different times for different purposes. The second one, cities wore crepe or cities wore black. I bet you've seen it. I bet you've seen pictures of it. This is not a common public decoration any longer, but it is still done. At times of a passing funeral, of a public figure or tragedy, very often buildings are hung in crepe. That is black fabric or black paper. Now, you've all probably seen another version of these hangings at celebratory times in the United States, and they would be hung with something like red, white, and blue in a banner like that. Decorate a building like it. You've probably all seen it. It's folded and it's often bow-shaped like that. But in this instance, which has to do with the passing of a prominent public figure, I think crepe might make sense. There's another reason why crepe might make sense too, a little one, but not insignificant. Black is a color of mourning, that's true, but why might cities wore crepe be more effective than cities wore black?
Because crepe is more specific, and because it's something that's worn, it corresponds to the verb.
Yes. It's something that you hang on the buildings of cities. Black is more generic. It's less specific. It's not wrong. Could say cities wore black, but it's not as visually vivid either. And then the final choice, people stood in tears. People stood crying. Which would you write? People stood in tears. People stood crying.
I would choose people stood crying because it maintains the same rhythm of cities wore crepe, people stood crying. That would be my choice.
Same rhythm? Other choice?
I would have chose in tears because what you said before, it's more visually vivid.
It is a little more, yes. It's rhythmic too. Perhaps people stood in tears. Does anyone remember what was written? I myself don't actually remember what is written. Take a look in our own words. Anyone have this from Sandberg? Let's see what Sandberg wrote. Sandberg was a poet. People stood, you don't stand in tears, so it's a little more poetic to say that in some ways. But people stood crying is very descriptive, it's very accurate. This is Sandberg on Lincoln. I think it's fairly near the beginning of the excerpt, as I recall. People stood in tears, yeah. Would be my slight preference, but now, what has this shown us so far? It's shown us that none of these choices is wrong or bad. They aren't. But you have to exert your judgment about which is preferential. If you do this in every line or every other line of your composition with phrases that have key words, and you make a better choice even every third line, you will have a markedly better composition. Word choice is that important. It really is. I think I've used the image before of those people who have eyeglasses or contact lenses. You go to an ophthalmologist and they put something up on the wall and the ophthalmologist says, is this better or is this better? You all gone through that if you have glasses? Is this and sometimes you say, oh, well, the first one's better. That's easy. Sometimes it's the second one. That's easy. And then sometimes you cannot make up your mind. Could you put that one back in, please? Oh, yes. Well, the first one, no. I think the second one, no. Oh, no. Okay, I can't tell. That happens sometimes when you're judging your own writing. You cannot be perfectionistic about it. Move on, come back to it. But do it. That's the point. God still has a way of bringing or wringing good out of evil. This is from King. Yeah? Throw that microphone over there. No, I didn't say that. Yes?
I think ringing, because I think his meaning is that evil is the default and he's finding good, and ringing has more of that connotation.
Yes, and what else does ring have a connotation of? When you wring something out of something. What does it suggest as a physical activity? Hard work, yes, it suggests some kind of effort. And one would think it would take a little bit of effort to get something good out of something evil. So bringing isn't wrong, but it implies less effort, less work in some way. Against this, the Niagara movement, this is from W.E.B. Du Bois, eternally or continually or continuously protests. Nora?
I'd say eternally, because the word eternal implies immortality, and that implies that the Niagara movement, no matter how many years, will always live on forever.
Yeah.
They'll always protest.
We will protest this forever, no matter what changes. Continually is rather weak, and it implies time. Continuously, I don't like at all, because continuously usually implies space. Now, you may all use continually and continuously as perfect synonyms, but they aren't really, technically. Continuously means more in space. It's got an S. Continually means more in time. That was a continual action, meaning that happened in time, continually. Not that was a continuous action. This is something that we aren't too careful of in our prose. It's a minor point, very minor point, but why do we have different words? If not to elicit different connotations. Philip?
I just have a question.
Yes, of course.
I agree that internally sounds stronger, but at the same time I do wonder, saying that you're going to protest this forever and ever and ever might suggest, like, is your protest really effective if you're doing it internally rather than like until?
That's a good point. So why eternally? I would say that the defense of that would be, as long as these conditions exist, we will protest them. If they still continue to exist, we will protest them at that time. Our protest will be eternal until these conditions are changed. It's a little bit stronger. It calls attention to itself. It has that liability that you mentioned, but I think on the whole, when you're weighing choices, it probably is better. The wrongs against which we now position ourselves, or the wrongs against which we now array ourselves, are no common wrongs. This is from Woodrow Wilson, I believe. What would be better, position or array? This is a harder choice, but it's a choice. Every writer makes a choice of words. Position or array?
I think I would go with position in this case, because the word array to me seems like more spread out, whereas position is like more like together, that we are getting together in a position, versus array is kind of spread out in that context.
Array can mean an array. Position means like that. Anybody want to speak up for array?
Array could have like a stronger military connotation, since he's advocating for declaration of war in this instance. Because I don't know, when I think of that, I think of like a list or like a regular line of people. So it could be sort of talking about like soldiers marching, or have that sort of feeling.
Yes, and that's a point because this is a speech about going to war. This is, again, a relatively equivocal choice. What Wilson actually had was array. There's nothing wrong with position. A common phrase is battle array. They were drawn up in battle array. That's a very common phrase. There is a more military connotation to it. It can mean spread out, but an array that is spread out usually means spread out for a purpose, not random. We put that in an array, meaning there's a planned notion behind it. It's not just throwing stuff out like that. But again, there's nothing wrong with position. And Wilson very well could have written position. He didn't. He chose array, or his speechwriters, probably Wilson. At that time, there weren't many ghostwriters. The loud or the hoarse voice of the mob which says kill. This is from a legal defense by Clarence Darrow, and he's pleading for the court not to sentence his clients to death, not to send them to capital punishment. Would you choose, if you were speaking, loud or hoarse? Why hoarse?
Maybe hoarse, a connotation of emotion involved, emotions.
Yes, there's certainly emotion involved with hoarseness. What else is involved with hoarseness, Noura?
Well, if the point of the law case was to convince them not to kill his client or whatever, hoarse implies that that they're so tired from always yelling kill.
Well, that's right. The hoarseness. So why do you get hoarse? You keep on repeating things.
So it's more specific to that case than loud.
Yes, unless you've got a cold, but that's not the case here. People get hoarse because they have a cold, but usually you get hoarse because you talk too much, you yell too much. So it has that suggestion that the mob, and he uses the word mob here, has just been automatically and habitually yelling. Kill, 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 until the mob gets hoarse. And that therefore there's a sense that it's an unthinking, repeated cry, rather than loud, which could be a one-off. They're loud. Well, that may be true, but hoarse is more effective. Very often, you don't even realize you have a choice in word choice, because you're so used to the word you've used as an adjective or as a noun that you don't even think of another one. You just don't. Doesn't even cross your mind. So it's good sometimes to slow down and ask yourself the very simple question, can I think of a better word than the one I used? Very simple question. Not because the word you use sounds wrong or you struggled with it, though that's a good enough reason to ask, and you certainly should ask if you're unhappy with the word. But let's say you're perfectly content with the word. Ask anyway. Ask if there isn't a better choice.
Do you have any advice for noticing your own sort of stylistic leanings that way, and then whether you should lean into them or try other things at this point? Like I just noticed throughout this conversation, I tend to lean towards words that sound better, sorry, but and have like a more alliteration or something or other. And I'm sure like most people have some sort of.
That's a very good question. My advice at the highest level of generality would be experiment. Keep on experimenting. Prose gets better because you try different things. Sometimes they don't work. Sometimes you try figures of speech or word choice and they fall a little flat in your face. And you might not realize that. So to supplement that, as I've suggested a number of times before, have someone read out loud to you what you've written without your looking at it, so you hear it as well as look at it. Because you really don't hear it when you look at your own writing. Even if you read it out loud to yourself, you're still looking at it, and you're getting a lot of the information about your entire sentence visually from the sentence you wrote and not from your ear. So that would be a suggestion, is have someone read it to you. And then finally, I would say don't be afraid to make some choices which might seem to you to be a little outlandish. Maybe they'll work.